Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine from SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 26 affordable rental units at Lyberty Green in Falmouth. So the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the available apartments. I'll also cover the application and lottery processes and what to expect after the lottery is run. So if you have any questions during this session, you're encouraged to either type them into the Zoom chat feature, or I'll be asking throughout the presentation if anyone has any questions, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself at that time. When you entered the session, you were muted. This is a recording. This is being recorded, I should say, so we would just want to minimize any outside noise. And this live session is being recorded because it is going to be posted to our YouTube channel later on in case anyone wants to review it that was not able to attend. So if you have any issues viewing the screen, I have some information that I'll be putting up that you'll be able to see, and I'll be flipping through these slides here. So just a little bit, to start off, a little bit of background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we're an off-site affordable housing consultant group. We're not the on-site management team at Lyberty Green, but we've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units, conduct the information session. We're also going to be the ones collecting lottery applications to determine an applicant's eligibility for the lottery. And so in the initial phases of this process, we are your main point of contact rather than the management team over at Lyberty Green. But then further along in the process, the on-site leasing office at Lyberty Green will be taking over as your main point of contact. So there's a few steps in the process, the first being to apply for this affordable housing lottery. And if you're found to be qualified for the lottery based off of your self-reported information in your program application, you will be entered into the lottery. The second step in the process is after the lottery, if you're one of the top households on the waiting list, you will be invited forward to do a lease eligibility screening with the leasing office over at Lyberty Green. So that's separate from the screenings that SEB Housing will be doing, and a lease screening with the management team is similar to what you may have gone through in the past if you've rented before. So they might ask for a credit check, rental history check, background check, that sort of thing. And then if you're found to be lease eligible by the management team, you'll be referred back over to SEB Housing, and at that point, that's when you need to submit your income information. So to get into this lottery, you're just self-reporting your income, you're completing the online application, or you are submitting a paper application where you're estimating your total household income, listing everyone in the household. But that third step in the process, after the lottery and after you've been found to be lease eligible, that's when you'll be submitting the verification of your income to us. So things like pay stubs, tax returns, all of that. And you'll have about 10 days to get that information into SEB Housing at that point. So about 3 steps in the process there. The first being to apply, of course, for this lottery. If you haven't already, we do recommend that you go to our website. If you go to sebhousing.com and you click on I want to rent, and then you select Lyberty Green, since this is a rental opportunity, you'll be taken to a page specific to this property with a downloadable version of the application, also the information packet. The PDF of the information packet, that is where most of the information I'm sharing tonight is coming from. But even if you attend this session, we do encourage you to take a look at that, since there's a lot of information in there that could be useful to you. There also is on our website listing a online application. So this link here is the link to the online application for Lyberty Green. So we encourage you to use that because that's the quickest way to ensure that your application is received right away. Once you submit that online application, you will receive a confirmation email instantaneously. It will say your application was received, we're reviewing it. If for any reason completing the application online isn't an option for you, you of course can download that lottery application or request a paper application to be mailed to you. So a few different ways for you to get your application into us. The application, like I said, is quite brief because it doesn't require you to submit any supporting documentation right now. So applications are due by 2 p.m. on November 7th, so a little bit less than a month left now. And 2 p.m. is a hard cutoff for the online application because as of 2 p.m. on November 7th, that online application will no longer be active. So that is why there's that 2 p.m. deadline there. You don't need to be a resident of Falmouth to apply for this lottery. Just want to put that out there. And yeah, so just to go on to more of the information here. So it's anticipated that the first affordable units at Lyberty Green will be available for occupancy shortly after the lottery. And of course, all of the applicant screenings would need to be completed by your household. But there shouldn't be much of a delay in moving into one of these units if you are determined to be eligible. So there are 12 one-bedroom affordable apartments. They each have one bathroom, and they will be renting for $1,770. 2 of those one-bedroom units are disabled accessible, and 1 of those one-bedroom units is hearing impairment accessible. There's also 13 two-bedroom apartments. Those have 2 bathrooms, and they'll be renting for $2,097. 2 of those 2 bedrooms are disabled accessible. And then there's 1 3-bedroom apartment that also has 2 bathrooms. We'll be renting for $2,402. Those rents are set in accordance with a formula that takes the area median income for Barnstable or Falmouth into consideration. So that formula is created by HUD, which is the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. And the rent can increase once every year. It would never increase in the lease term. So if you were to sign a lease for, January 1st, 2026, your rent would stay the same for at least that 12-month period. And any changes to the rent, you would always be notified in writing several months beforehand as well. The affordable units have been selected by the owner and were approved by Mass Housing as being representative of units in the building as a whole. So what that means is they're not the smallest units. These affordable units are not all clustered together in one location. They're not identifiable as affordable apartments in any way when you're walking around the property. There is parking available free of charge. Tenants are going to pay for the cost of their own utilities, so electric, heat, hot water, electricity, water, and sewer. Those would all be the responsibility of the tenant. 1 pet per household is permitted. There's also going to be an outdoor pool. There's in-unit laundry for every apartment as well. So in terms of the logistical information on how to apply, the basics on the units, does anyone have any questions before I move on to eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program? All right, so there's a few eligibility criteria for this affordable housing program. The first is that households that are applying have to have qualifying income amounts. I'll talk much more about that in just a few minutes, but as you can see on your screen, if you have the computer screen up now, you can see that if you're a 1-person household, in order to be found eligible for this lottery, your total household income has to be at or below $74,800, and then it goes up from there. So if you're a 2-person household, your total annual household income has to be below $85,450, because those amounts are the cutoff for the program. So they're the maximum income limit for this affordable housing program. The second eligibility criteria, I'm going to click back to that in just a minute, but just to show you the eligibility criteria here. The second item to keep in mind for eligibility purposes is that household priority is given based on household composition. So basically, generally that means that larger households have priority for larger units. Also for this lottery specifically, keep in mind that 1-person households can't apply for 2-bedroom units. and two-person households can't apply for three-bedroom units unless a household member has a disability which requires a extra bedroom as part of a reasonable accommodation. And that is a mass housing requirement, so that's why it's applicable for this lottery. The third eligibility criteria, households can't own a home upon move-in. So if you own a home now, it would need to be sold prior to leasing an affordable apartment at Lyberty Green. And then the fourth eligibility criteria, this doesn't come up very often, but a household can't have financial interest in the development or be considered a related party. So a related party, according to the regulations of this affordable housing program, are households who have members who work for the developer or the management company. Then you wouldn't be eligible for this opportunity. And so to circle back, like I said, on the income criteria, so since these are affordable units, they're being made available to rent at prices that are lower than the identical or very similar units, market rate units in the building. The maximum income amounts that are listed here are maximum amounts set by household size, as you can see. These are listed everywhere. You're going to see them on the application and the information packet on our website. So you'll be able to reference those and have a quick look to see if you think your household would be eligible for this lottery on paper. And like I said, there's no income verifications that are required at this stage, but you will need to provide documentation like pay stubs and tax returns and all of that later on. So you will be given a documentation requirements guide, which is just a guide that kind of runs you through or specifies for you what information you will need to provide to SDB Housing eventually. So if you're found to be eligible for this lottery, you'll get a link to that guide that kind of lets you know how many pay stubs you should set aside and how many tax returns you should have access to when the time comes to submit that to us. So just to give a basic overview of how we will eventually need to count your income for this program. So income for all household members is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months. And that includes, things that aren't guaranteed, like bonuses and overtime. So any income that you have been making in the past year, we're going to assume that you're going to continue making it going forward unless there's some sort of definitive documentation showing that you're no longer at that job, for example, or maybe your employer is not offering overtime next year, whatever it might be. The only exceptions are income that is being earned by a minor. So if you have a 16-year-old in your household who's working, their wage income isn't going to count towards the total household income. Also, dependent full-time students who are working, we only count the first $480 of their wages when determining your eligibility. So it might be, you have a 21-year-old who's working, it's only going to be the first $480 that we count towards your total household income. And it is gross income, not net, that is counted. So the program, unfortunately, has that is a requirement, counting gross income rather than what you take home after taxes. Most of us are not taking home the full amount of what our salary is, but unfortunately, it is that gross income that we need to count. And then how we calculate income is not one size fits all. So everyone's income circumstances are unique. Some applicants have a weekly salary that's consistent throughout the year. Other people are self-employed or working seasonally or per diem. So if your income is more sporadic, we may need to look further back into the past in order to project what your income is or will be for the next 12 months. So maybe more pay stubs or just more information from you would be needed. And then specifically for households who have someone who's self-employed, you might need to complete a profit and loss statement for your business. We do have a template for a profit and loss statement if you need that. When you're filling out your application, you're going to want to make sure, this is whether it's online or a paper application, just make sure that you are completing it in full. So you're writing down not just wage income, but if anybody in the household has, Social Security benefits, a pension, assets that are generating income, whatever the income type is, just make sure that you're filling all of that out. And you might have noticed over here there was approximate minimum incomes listed on this slide, but just keep in mind that while the Affordable Housing Program doesn't have set minimum incomes, the management team at Lyberty Green, and really every management team, has minimum incomes because they want to make sure that tenants can afford the rent, whether it be a market rate rent that is being paid or an affordable rent. So the management company at Lyberty Green has set a minimum household equivalent to 2.5 times the monthly rent. Those amounts are listed in the information packet on the application, but it's also here on your screen. So if you're looking to rent a 1-bedroom apartment and you're a 1-person household, your income would need to be between about $53,100 and $74,800 to qualify. Now, these maximum income limits are set by the program, and they are set in stone. So if you make $100 or even $2 over these amounts, you won't be eligible for the program. But these approximate minimum incomes have a little bit more wiggle room. So like I said, they're set by the management team or the leasing office at Lyberty Green. So if you have liquid assets, like a decent amount of money in the bank that you would be able to access to potentially pay rent, and the management team at Lyberty Green decides that qualifies you, even if your total household income is, for example, like $50,000 instead of $53,000, they may qualify you. So that will be up to their discretion, but these maximum income limits are set in stone. The only exception to the minimum income amount are households with mobile housing vouchers like Section 8 or MRBP. If you have one of those vouchers and you are planning to use it at this property, you can disregard the minimum income amounts because they won't apply to your household. And that's because you have an agency that is administering your voucher that will be picking up a portion of your rent. So you don't have to worry about those minimum rents. But anybody without a voucher, like I said, you would have to have between these minimum income thresholds and the maximum income amount. Assets are not, there's no asset limit for rental opportunities. So you might have a significant amount of assets. You might be retired, maybe you just have a lot of money saved up. That is fine. That doesn't disqualify you based on the income maximum because there is no asset limit. If you do have assets, though, we will still need to verify them. So we'll still be asking for pay stubs, bank statements, and the net cash value of a 401k if you have it. And that is because although there's no asset limit, we do still need to count any income that is being generated by assets towards your total household income. So just keep that in mind and make sure that you're completing the asset section of the application accurately as well. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have any, if you're interested in this opportunity, you're encouraged to get your application in to get the process started. You have about 3 weeks to do that. And want to mention too, as you're looking at the application, you can apply for more than one unit size. So if you think you might be interested, for example, in both a 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, you should indicate that on your application. There's no downside to doing that. There is a potential downside if you just apply for a 2-bedroom and you later decide, after the lottery, well, I would have considered a 3. And the downside is that maybe there's only one 3-bedroom. And, you would be at the bottom of that 3-bedroom list if you wanted to be added to it later on. So if you think you might be interested in more than one unit size, just make sure that you indicate that on your application. Once you submit your application, your lottery application, we will contact you if any information appears to be missing or appears to be incorrect. If you fill out your application online, like I said, you're going to get that instantaneous kind of bounce back email, auto-generated email that says we received your application. But about a week or two later, you'll also get a more personalized email from SEB Housing saying whether or not you've been approved for the lottery. If you are approved, It will have confirmation of the unit sizes that you applied for, the household members. It will have your application number, which will be in the form of a series of numbers. So if you're the first person to be found eligible for Lyberty Green, this lottery, you will have a lottery application number of A.001. And I should also say that that email that has your lottery application number, it will also confirm whether or not your household identify themselves as a local preference household. So if you've self-reported on your application that you believe your household qualifies for local preference, it will confirm that there for you. So make sure that the information on this email appears to be correct. You want to make sure you're on the correct waiting list for this lottery. Speaking of local preference, so local preference could apply to your household if you live in Falmouth now, if you work for the town of Falmouth, or you work at a business located within the town, or if you are a guardian of a child attending Falmouth Public Schools. Some of the affordable units at Lyberty Green will have local preference, which means that some local preference households will get priority for those units compared to households who don't have local preference that are the same household size. And then more information about local preference too is on the last page of the information packet, but that should not dissuade you from applying if you don't currently live in Falmouth, both because we don't know how many people who are living in Falmouth are going to apply, and because not all units have that local preference for their waiting list. If you're found to be ineligible for the lottery at any point during this process, maybe you're found to be over income, for example, you'll be informed by email and you're encouraged to contact us with any questions, especially when you're filling out an online application. If you have a typo or something and you mistakenly write your income incorrectly or enter your income incorrectly, you want to make sure that if you have any questions on the ineligible notice that you let us know, because we can always go back and change any mistakes for you. So on your application, you will have indicated your household type, so either 1, 2, or 3. In some cases, smaller households can apply for larger units, but in general, larger households will have priority over smaller households on the waiting list. So like I said, the information packet has a lot more information on household types and the priority of each waiting list. But to give you an example, a type 1 household might consist of 1 person, or it could be 2 adults sharing a bedroom. The 2 adults sharing a bedroom can apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but all type 2 and type 3 households are going to have priority on that waiting list over the household who is a type 1 household. And, type 2 and 3 households are going to have higher positions, which means more favorable positions on a waiting list that has priority for type 2 households. And again, just to remind you, for this lottery, 1-person households can't apply or live in a 2-bedroom unit, and 2-person households can't apply or live in a 3-bedroom unit unless there is a household member who requires an extra bedroom for reasonable accommodation purposes, so if there's a disability. The lottery is going to take place on November 20th at 6 p.m. And it'll be held by Zoom, similar to this information session. So we do anticipate that it's going to be held digitally, so meaning the lottery application numbers will all be randomized on the screen, and the results will be shared with you via screen share, just like you're seeing the PowerPoint presentation right now. Every lottery number is included in the drawing. So sometimes you think of lotteries and you think, okay, well, if there's 26 units, there's going to be 26 lottery numbers drawn, but that isn't the case here, because the purpose of these lotteries is to establish an order of priority for the waiting list. So we need everyone to have a placement on each waiting list, because typically if we have 26 units that are in need of being leased, it's not going to be the first 26 households who actually make their way all the way through the eligibility and lease screening process. We will have to screen more than 26 households to fill these apartments. So in general, it's more beneficial for your number to be placed higher on the waiting list, which would usually mean that your number is drawn earlier in the lottery. But again, we have to sort the results by the waiting list priorities. So if a qualified, to give you an example, if a qualified type 1 household, like a 2-person couple, is drawn first in the lottery and they've only applied for a 2-bedroom unit, they're not going to be at the top of that waiting list because type 2 households will be ahead of them. So there's a couple factors that need to be sorted out when after the lottery drawing. So if you're watching the night of the lottery, you're not going to know where you stand on the waiting list until later that evening when the results are shared with you and everything has been sorted onto the waiting list. But you know, you could still attend the lottery to have an idea of next steps. So if your number is drawn later in the lottery, you shouldn't lose hope. You might still have the opportunity to move forward in this process and rent one of the apartments. We'll do our best, like I said, to send those waiting lists to you the same evening as the lottery. And when you're looking at that email that comes in with your lottery application, with the waiting list attached to it that evening, you'll have a better idea as to whether or not you will be moving forward to the next step in the process, which will be to do your lease screening with the leasing office. Following the lottery, like I said, the top households are going to be sent to the management team for lease screenings, and the management team will have your contact information after that evening, and you will also have the management team's contact information. So you can coordinate a lease screening with them within about 5 days. You'll have to connect with them. And once the management team has performed your lease screening, first of all, they're doing the same lease screening for applicants of affordable units as they're doing for applicants of market rate units. So the same criteria is going to be used for everyone in terms of the credit check, rental history check, all of that. They're likely going to screen more households than they have available units. So for example, Lyberty Green has 1 3-bedroom apartment. They're going to screen more than 1 household for that 3-bedroom unit, just to keep the process going. A lot of times the process of leasing these apartments takes quite a while because, you know, sometimes someone submitted an application, but actually they already took an apartment somewhere else or they're not qualified. So usually more than 1 person is invited to move forward, even if there's only 1 unit available. Once your lease approved, that's the point in the process where having a position near the top of the waiting list is beneficial, because if you're the first person on a 1-bedroom waiting list, for example, you're going to have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit based off of whatever factors are important to you. So maybe you are looking for a unit on the first floor, or a unit that you're able to lease for a certain lease date. So once the first person on the waiting list has selected and reserved an apartment, the second person on the waiting list will have the second chance to do that and reserve one of the remaining units. Once you've reserved one of the apartments, that's when you are going to be referred back to SEB Housing by the leasing office. And then we'll coordinate with you again to get your, to coordinate your submission of your income, tax, and asset information. So that's the point in the process that you have to submit the, your pay stubs, your benefit statements if you have any, tax returns, bank statements, that sort of thing. So hopefully by that point you've had a chance to take a look at the documentation requirements guide. So you have all of your information ready. You have about 10 days to get that information into us. If you don't have everything on the first try, no worries. We make sure that we work with everyone. We want you to get a completed application in. We'll send you an incomplete notice if anything is missing. We understand that there's a lot of information that is required to come in. So we'll work with you on that. Once you're found to be program eligible by SEB Housing, after you submitted all of the information to us, we will inform you and the leasing office that you've been found eligible and you can sign your lease. Once you've signed your lease, you're done with screenings until your lease renewal date. So like I said, if you sign a lease for, January 1st, for example, it would be around this time or maybe sometime in September that you would be asked to recertify with the leasing office ahead of your lease renewal. So we always just remind anyone who is renting a affordable apartment to kind of have access to your income, asset, and tax documentation, because you're going to need that once per year when you're recertifying your income. At your recertification, if your income has increased and you're now making more than 80% of the area median income, which is the amount that you needed to make below to qualify for this lottery, that's fine, because households remain eligible to rent the apartment at an affordable price as long as the household income doesn't exceed 140% of the current year's area median income. So to give you an example of that, to apply for this lottery, a household of 2 would qualify if they had a total household income at or below $85,450. That's that max annual income. That same family can make up to $119,630 at the time of the recertification in order to remain eligible for the affordable apartment next year. So there's a little wiggle room there if you do have an income increase, and you'd still be able to rent at the property at the affordable price as well. So that covers what I wanted to get through in the information packet. Did anything that was covered tonight bring up any questions for you? Just let me know. I also like to mention too, if you think of anything after tonight, or if you're watching this after the fact, you can contact us, send an email to info@scbhousing.com, or give us a call at this number. Because again, you have about 3 weeks or so, a little bit over 3 weeks to get your application in. So if you have questions during that time, or questions on the application itself, you can reach us there. Anything else before I let you go? Again, this lottery does have the online application, so feel free to access it there or go to SCB Housing's website to apply.
Could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Hello?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm applying for the lottery also. I'm just wondering, I'm definitely under the annual income limit.
Okay.
But will could my 401k, which I'm not collecting from it, I'm not planning to for years.
Yes.
I'm retired.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, what could that eliminate me?
So no,
I have a 401.
It could potentially, but I highly doubt it. So it's only the when we're looking at 401ks, we're looking at the post-tax amount if you were to liquidate it now. So you would be asked to get a statement from the financial institution that has your 401k, and they would be able to estimate what the post-penalty amount would be if you were to draw from it and just liquidate it now. If that amount puts you over the income limit, then possibly, but usually that isn't a disqualifying factor.
Okay, yeah, I'm not. I have Social Security now and a small pension, but I'm not planning on touching my 401k for many years. I'm 63, so I'm thinking 73 maybe. So no, I'm not going to touch it at all. So that wouldn't count toward.
So the post-penalty amount would count towards income, but again, it would be something that you would be asked to verify for us, but it may not disqualify you depending on the amount.
So I could be disqualified even if I'm not collecting?
So we would be, if you're earning income on that asset, that's what could disqualify you. So the amount would have to be verified by the financial institution in terms of what you're earning on it per year. But if you're not earning enough to disqualify you based off of, the maximum income limits here, then potentially not.
Okay, so even if I'm not touching it at all, I don't plan to touch it for years, that could still, just what I'm earning on interest could eliminate me?
Depending on the interest amount, but that's only because any assets that are earning interest is the interest income that is counted towards. it's not going to be the total, 401k amount that is counted towards your total income.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm trying to find.
You want to list all of that information on your application, and then when someone's reviewing your application, they will know what you need to supply to confirm.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Because I'm not making much now with the social and the pension.
Right.
It's years away on the 401. But I see what you're saying on the interest income. Yeah.
Just
okay.
The interest income. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your info.
Sure. Any other questions from anyone?
No, I'm going to go ahead. I guess you said the best way to do it is online. The best way to get it done quickly. So I'll fill it. I'm looking for a place for me and my mother. My mother's 92, so I'm looking for a place for the two of us. So a 2-bedroom would be the.
Great. Yeah.
I could apply for a 2-bedroom and also a 1-bedroom. You said, right? If
Yeah, you can apply for any of the right, unless you need a reasonable accommodation, you wouldn't qualify for the 3-bedroom. But yep, you could apply for a 1 or a 2, and I would suggest online just because for most people it's the most straightforward way to apply. But yeah, so just go to that link that is in on our online listing, and then also on screen now.
So I could, even though there's 2 of us, I could apply for a 1-bedroom.
You could, but I mean, you might not want to, if you don't think you would actually be, interested in that.
No, we would. I'd sleep on the couch or something if I had to. It's, it's more for my mother than me to get her down there.
Yeah, you could. It would just be up to the state sanitary code if the management team would allow 2 people in a 1-bedroom, but I can't imagine they wouldn't. For sometimes there's couples who are
right. I was just thinking that a couple might want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be fine.
Okay. Would it benefit me to do both the 2 and the 1, or should I just stick to the 2?
I mean, if you're interested in both, I would do both, because otherwise you're not going to be on the 1-bedroom waiting list at all.
Okay. All right.
Right.
I'll definitely do both then. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. And if any other questions come up, please contact us. We, like I said, we're kind of everybody's main point of contact until the lottery. So happy to answer any other questions that come up.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Of course. Thanks for attending, and we look forward to getting your application.
Thank you. I'll put it in tonight. Thanks. I appreciate that very much. Take care.
Good night. You too. Bye, everybody.
So long.